Welcome to Best Fountain Pen. Thanks for coming to my channel. Today we're going to review the Kaweco Skyline Sport Series fountain pen. But before I get to that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking your time to watch my channel. Whether you're a first-time viewer or a long-time subscriber, I really appreciate that you're taking your time to check out these reviews and give me feedback on how we're doing for you. Just real quick, we relaunched our Facebook page, or my Facebook page. It's at facebook.com/bestfountainpen. I also have a newsletter on my website so you won't miss anything. The only difference is that the aluminum Sport is a lot heavier than the others because it's made of obviously solid aluminum. But they're the same size, same shape. They both have the octagonal caps, and the buttons that say Kaweco on the end are all matched. So if I take the aluminum out, that one's a little bit heavier. Go through the regular classic Sport. That one's probably the most similar to the Skyline Sport, but so is the Ice Sport. The Ice Sport comes in really fun colors. So they're transparent, and you can see they've got pink, blue, yellow, green, a ton of different colors that you can get this fountain pen in. But they're all plastic and they all have the same characteristics. The Classic Sport comes in a ton of colors too, or not as many as the Ice Sport. They're not as bright. Comes in several colors, I should say. And it's identical to the Skyline Sport. In fact, I think they could have just relaunched the additional colors of the Skyline, which are mint and gray and white, into the regular Classic Sport series and sold them that way. They're the same price, everything's the same. The only difference that you would see has to do with the nibs. So if I were to show you these nibs, and I don't know if it'll focus to kind of show you a little bit, one's gold plated and the other one's just your solid or your regular stainless steel. So there's not a ton of difference there. I just wanted to kind of show you that that's the only difference. They write pretty much the same with the exception of the one nib that I have here, which I'll show you later in the writing sample. I think the Skyline Sport that I received has a little bit of baby's bottom. It hard starts and skips occasionally, so that's not anything I experienced with the Classic Sport. But I don't think it's reflective of all of these pens overall. I think it's just quality control on this one pen. So what are the pros and cons? So now that we're looking at the Skyline Sport, I'll put the regular Sport away. So the pros of this pen obviously are its size. It's a pocket size. You can easily hold this in your pocket. Obviously when it's capped, it's even smaller. Fits very nicely in your pocket. Color's kind of cool. It reads as a blue-green. They call it mint, so I guess that would be why. It's also cheap. You can pick these up for 30 bucks. So I like that about these pens, and it posts extremely well. So the cap's not going to fall off on you. Once you post it, it's going to stay there. The one thing that you can't do with this fountain pen is piggyback cartridges. So this is the normal cartridge that comes with it, but let me show you. So to piggyback a cartridge, basically it's keeping an extra cartridge around if you run out of ink and you don't happen to be at home where you could syringe fill. This particular one, if you look at the height when it's attached to the section, it's physically impossible to piggyback your cartridges. So you're not going to be able to do that. You'll have to carry the cartridge separate outside of the pen if you run out of ink in order to refill that. Oops, put that section back in. So you can't do that. The cons on this particular pen, like I said, the nib that I got has baby's bottom, so it skips and tends to hard start, but I could easily swap that out. The nibs are fairly easy to swap out in Kaweco's, and this is a fine nib. I prefer a little bit the medium nib, but that's just a personal preference. There's not a lot of difference in Kaweco nibs between a fine and a medium. They tend to be roughly the same line width, which I'll show you in the writing sample. So weight is a con for me. I like a heavier pen. That's why the All Sport, the aluminum one, is my favorite out of the Kaweco pocket pens. Well, one of my favorites. There's a Lilliput review that I'm doing soon, and that one's really my favorite. So anyway, I do like that it uses any cartridge, so you can use an international short. But I like that it doesn't use a proprietary cartridge. It uses any international short cartridge. But I like Kaweco ink. There's nothing wrong with that. And cons, again, it's lightweight, but some people prefer that. And it comes in mint, gray, and black. So you can get a squeeze converter. It doesn't have room, obviously, for the full-size converter, but you can get a little bulb squeeze converter for these pens, too. I've never had any luck with those. Whenever I try to use a squeeze converter, it always ends up in a mess, and it only fills about halfway in the bulb, so that's not really beneficial to me. So anyway, check out the writing review and let me know what you think. All right, so we're ready for our writing sample of the Kaweco Skyline Sport. I'm just going to show you how this one writes, and I also have the Classic Sport, and I'll do a writing sample right. That was a little of that skipping I told you about earlier and hard starting. It's got a little bit of baby's bottom. Does that every once in a while. All right, so just to show you kind of where the hatching is, cross hatching, a little bit of how, whether or not this section and feed can keep up with ink flow delivery. I'm just gonna scribble a little bit, let you see some of that. So there was that hard start that we talked about earlier. Ink delivery seems fine once you get it flowing. See that? Oh, awful. Uh-oh. Oh, isn't that frustrating? Let's make sure I'm not out of ink before I blame it on the pen. Nope, full pen. This is Clairefontaine paper too, and it's definitely not glossy. It's very fountain pen friendly. So I'm just gonna push a little harder because I try to push through the baby's bottom. There we go. When I push soft, it struggles a little bit. See? When you push really hard to force the center of the ink capillary to kind of form that capillary action, then it will go. So anyway, if I were to switch out that nib, it'd be just fine. But right now, it's got a little bit of baby's bottom until I could switch it out. Now that was the fine. I forgot to write that in the writing sample. That was the fine nib. And now we're going to take a look at the median nib from the Classic Sport. Again, same company, nibs are the same. This one just happens to be gold plated. So let's do a writing sample so you can stack up line width. The Sports Series keeps up really well. The ink delivery is fine. That writing sample and review of the Kaweco Skyline Sport. If this has helped you in any way, please click the thumbs up down below. It helps other people like you find this video if you find it helpful. Also, please subscribe, and that way you won't miss any of the videos that I have. So if you have any questions, throw them in the comments below, and I'll also have a link to where you can get the pen.